You're listening to JetNation Radio, the official podcast of JetNation.com, the largest independent fan site in the NFL. Be sure to check out our forums and talk all things Jets with thousands of other diehard Jets fans. Now, to get you up to date on all the latest Jets news, notes, and quotes, here are your hosts, Glenn Naughton and Alex Varallo.
Good evening, Jets fans. I am Glenn Naughton. This is JetNation Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Exciting week as we have football, training camp or not. It's just, we wait all year for actual football news. No, the games don't start for a few weeks, at least the preseason. And luckily, my co-host, Alex Varallo, who is on the line with us now, was able to attend a couple of the practices and will be attending some more in the future. So we're going to go right to Alex. Now, Alex is going to give us a little rundown. He's going to be his one physical notebook and tell us everything he saw, who impressed him, who didn't, and I will jump in with any questions I might have. But Alex, how are you doing? And lay it on us.
I'm doing well. It was a lot of fun this weekend. It was just got the pins and needles as I was walking through one Jets drive, heading toward the field, and the smell of football was in the air. I think we're only a few Sundays away from week one, so it's going to be here before we know it. And it was really great to see all the guys, coming together and practicing and everything like that. I really came away extremely impressed. My excitement level, as if it can't get any higher, is peaking pretty well right now. I'd have to say, in general, it's not the same team that we know. There's a different vibe going on the field. It seems like some guys are a little bit more refreshed, rejuvenated with the new system and the new philosophy. Right off the bat, I just want to say that the coaching staff is absolutely impressive. I guess a lot of people probably saw the tweets or the videos on Sunday. Greg Williams took some time to talk to the fans, which was completely random, and he cracked a couple jokes. He gave some encouragement about how tough, everyone is trying to, work so hard and go through whatever it takes to defend MetLife Stadium. I think that's quoting him exactly. And everybody was just on the edge of their seat. We did a Jets chant. It was great. It felt like we were back in the stadium. And to furthermore with the coaches, Sean Jefferson, he was the wide receiver coach. They called Sam Darnold a dude. He might have been one of the loudest guys and coaches on that field. These wide receivers are being held accountable. We're going to be physical this year, and it was just really great just to see all the guys back in there. A couple of the coaches that were really, really interesting to see, Joe Vitt. I remember there was a play, I think it was maybe 7-on-7, and they were doing some rushing drills, and he was in a staggered stance, almost pacing back and forth, looking at the linebackers going after the quarterback, and you could almost see like he was ready to hit somebody. So the bar is being raised from the coaching staff, and the players are kind of buying into it. It seems like there was a lot of energy on the field, and it was, again, I think this is going to be a completely different team from what we had last year. Now, to go into, some people that kind of intrigued me on Saturday and Sunday, I have to start with Kafusi. I didn't realize actually how enormous he was of an individual. He almost looks taller than Leonard Williams and bigger than Leonard Williams. And he was getting a lot of reps as the starting defensive end in 3-4 fronts and in 4-3 fronts. And when they were running their nickel, they were running some 4-2 packages with 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers. there was a lot of mixing and packages that Greg Williams was throwing out, and I was impressed on how everyone was on the same page. They're calling out their formations, and 3 guys are checking in, and 3 come off, and everyone really seemed to be on the same page. And for it only being, I think, the 3rd and 4th day of their practice, very impressive. These coaches have done a really, really good job to get everybody, to on the same page more or less. I have to say it was a little disappointing. As most people know, Marcus May hasn't been cleared as of yet, and it was a little scary for me to see Rontez Miles as the free safety. And it's kind of interesting because I remember people talking about how Greg Williams is a bit of a gambler when it comes to his formations. Now, it's similar as far as dialing up the pressure to Todd Bowles' defense, except he's more of a zone guy rather than a man coverage guy like Todd Bowles was. So he has no problem, running a cover 3 and putting his free safety, 18, 20 yards off the line of scrimmage. I tweeted this earlier today that at one point I thought Rontez Miles was returning a punt because he was so far back in coverage. So that was interesting to see how Miles was getting a lot of reps while May is still trying to get healthy. That stood out to me. There was on Sunday, McClendon was getting some snaps with Middleton. Doug Middleton was getting some snaps as free safety as well. So everyone's getting their opportunity to show what they can do to this coaching staff. The Blake Cashman was getting worked in with the ones in certain reps, which was very interesting. Arthur Mallette, I think his name is, was getting some reps as a nickel corner, which I thought was pretty interesting. He seemed to be, one of those guys that got swallowed up a little bit on certain plays. I'd have to say that the offensive guys, they had the day on Saturday, and then defense got it back on Sunday. So they're going back and forth. The level of competition is extremely high. I definitely would have to say that one of the most exciting things that I saw was a block by Trayvon Wesco, who was also getting some reps with the first string. He took Jeremy Clark off his feet, and Clark tried to make a move on him after the first initial contact, and then Wesco just buried him and finished him. And, I wish that there was some video on it. I didn't have my phone ready at the time, but you could hear it, you could feel it, and the entire offense from the sideline was very, very very loud. And the woos and the hollering was going on, and the defense was talking back, and then the offense was chiming back in on them. So it's a good level of healthy competition, and I'm sure everyone's seen it. The hit that Brian Poole put on Jamison Crowder, that one was as loud as it can be. It felt like it was right in front of me. And it was great to see Crowder just pop right up. He pointed for a first down. He spun the ball. They both gave each other a pat on the helmet. You'd think that maybe that might have led to a little bit of a skirmish, but, these guys are really pushing each other every day. And it was really, really cool to hear Jamison Crowder talk about that in one of his interviews. He was talking about the physicality that Poole brings and how it's pushing him. And, he's more of a, finesse route runner. He wants to weave through traffic and get into open space. And Poole is as tough as nails within that first 5 yards. So it's really helping him work on, getting off the line of scrimmage. And so both of these guys are really, really pushing each other, which I thought was phenomenal. And to also comment on Crowder, we also heard he's going to be back at practice tomorrow. So for anybody that was looking for an update on his health situation, it looked like he had dealt with a minor foot injury yesterday. And I think a couple hours ago, the Jets had tweeted that he's going to be full practice tomorrow. So definitely good to hear that we didn't end up with 2 injuries this past week. Still waiting to hear about Brent Quale. That was definitely a scary situation. I'm not sure what happened. There was a bit of a pile-on, and, a couple of guys fell, and it looks like maybe he got rolled up on. Not 100% sure, but hopefully, like the comment was, is that it's not going to be season-ending. So hopefully, Brent is able to get through this and get back with the team as soon as possible. I don't know, Glenn, is there any questions about particular players that you have in mind that you're interested in?
Well, you mentioned Cashman getting some run with the starters, and I heard that too. How was he? Instinctively we hear about how he's a guy who's always around the ball. If he's not making a tackle, he's a half a beat behind. Did he look like he was comfortable? Did he look overwhelmed at any point from what you saw?
Not really. There was some different variations that they were running. It was hard to pick up on exactly what style of defensive packages they were running, because really Jamal Adams makes everything so confusing, the way that he kind of moves around, and he's in the tackle box, and then he's dropping back into coverage, and then he's playing man coverage. So it was hard to see, what his specific role was. But there were times where I saw him dropping into zone coverage. And I have to say this, there was a lot of checkdowns. So not that that's a bad thing, but meaning that these guys were doing their job and kind of taking away particular lanes that Darnold may have wanted. So the only thing that I can completely remember is they were doing some individual drills. And you could definitely tell that, like, some guys will not go through the motions per se, but maybe like 80% while they're going through their drills. And Cashman looks like the type of guy that doesn't take a single play off. He seems like he's 100% full tilt every play. And definitely noticed the speed, the sideline to sideline, his coverage ability. It's definitely something that, is better for his game. He's going to be an asset when it comes to sub packages where you need guys like him to, maybe cover the flat or cover over, in the interior seams. So I definitely think that Blake Cashman has a bright future for this team.
Yeah, I think everything I'd heard on him was, mentioned how some people were surprised to see him with the ones, which really, I don't buy too much into that. It's exciting to hear the guys doing enough to get even a look with the ones. But, it's not even preseason. You're talking about training camp where coaches just want to get a look at guys in different situations, but by no means does that mean every guy is going to get a look with the ones. At the moment, take a look at somebody like Ja'Kai Polite, for example. So the fact that Cashman has done enough and whatever he has done to earn himself a look there is encouraging. You can't glean too much from it. But and I can't remember, Alex, I heard some good things about Derek Jones, but I think that may have been a practice or two after you had gone. Did you happen to notice anything out of him?
Yep. Jones was more with the 2s and 3s. He looked good. He looks to be in great shape. That's for darn sure. One thing that I did notice is when they were running some special teams drills, he was in a gunner role, and he had to go up against Tomlinson and Cannon. I really thought he was going to get swallowed up in that play by Eric Tomlinson. He actually did a really, really quick move off the line, kind of was getting up the seam, and then somehow Cannon just recovered and popped him right in his chest and knocked him out of bounds. And you look at Cannon, you don't think that he'd be a guy that has that much power. And it was definitely intriguing to see how Cannon might be one of those blocking guys on the punt squad team, or the punt return team, rather. And I did see some plays where he made some nice pass breakups and some tight coverage. But, again, it seems that he's still working his way through the depth chart and is still behind players like Poole, Roberts, and even Arthur Mallett was getting more opportunities with the first stringer. So he still has some work to do. I would probably say that he might be ahead of Perry Nickerson at this point out of the entire group. And, this is the type of situation for him where, maybe he's not going to be getting a lot of reps right now through training camp with the ones, but his opportunities will certainly come at the preseason games. And that's where I think that he's going to have to try to do his best to separate himself from the bunch.
Yeah, and you mentioned that injury to Brent Quale, which is bad news. The good news is, from the most recent report, is that it is not a season-ending injury. However, we don't know just how long Quale is going to be out. You would have to imagine he will spend at least part of the season on short-term IR because of that injury. The Jets have apparently, I saw this tweeted out a couple times now, the Jets are working out offensive tackle Sam Young. He's a vet. He spent a few years playing for Gase in Miami. Came in the league in 2010 as a draft pick with the Dolphins. Has spot starter, 21 career starts, 88 career games. So we'll see what comes of that. I would hope that, if Quale is going to be on the shelf for a little while, I'd like to see one of these young tackles find a way to stick, whether it's a guy like Wyatt Miller or Calvin Anderson, somebody like that. But either way, speaking of guys that could fill in for Quale, we are going to, and I've said this before, Alex, I am not a huge fan of way too early 53-man roster projections because it really is a great deal of guessing because we're going off of, in some cases with these players, scouting reports, a few highlights, perhaps, for those of us who take the time to watch a couple of games. I try to watch, 2, 3, 4 games on each rookie they either draft or sign as an undrafted free agent, but you're not getting to see as much as you'd like. Like, we'll have a much better idea, of course, when training camp is winding down, and we will do another one of these in the 2, 3, 4 days before the Jets make their final cuts. But we're going to do it tonight, have a little bit of fun, and we are going to do our very own 53-man roster projection, way too early, 53-man roster projection. And why don't you kick it off for us, Alex? You go ahead and start off. Obviously, no mystery who the starting quarterback's going to be, but how many quarterbacks do you see the Jets carrying? Is it 2? Is it 3? If it's 2, who wins that number 2 job?
If I had to be a guessing man, I think they're going to roll with 3 quarterbacks this season. I think Davis Webb didn't have the best weekend, but I definitely see him ahead of Simeon at this point. But as far as experience is concerned, I don't think that you would just let a guy like Simeon just walk and go on to another team. So if my guess would be, it would be 3 quarterbacks, and I think Luke Falk might be the odd man out with the quarterback situation.
Okay, I'm going to go with Simeon for what you had mentioned. I think they're going to go with the more experienced guy. So I'm going to say Darnold and Simeon, with Falk maybe grabbing a job on the practice squad, and Davis Webb will be the odd man out. He will be not on the roster in any form. And again, like I said, we're guessing. I want to see Davis Webb take some preseason snaps against, vanilla offense or not, vanilla defense or not. I want to see him, throw some footballs. We haven't seen him really do that since, a couple of years ago with the Giants in the preseason. So let's see how he does. But right now, I mean, in any situation, really, if you tell me that a head coach is trying to choose his backup quarterback and he's going to choose between 2 unproven guys, neither of which has ever been spectacular, but one has played and won some NFL games, I'm going to say he's going to take that guy as his backup. So as of today, I'm saying Simeon, with Falk having a chance to win or to get a spot on the practice squad.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, if it might be good down to 2 if Davis Webb fumbles another ball in practice. There was a situation to where the second, I don't know if it was second or third string guys, there was some fumbles coming from the center position and then some botched handoffs. So there was a specific play in which I think he had fumbled the ball and was taken right out of the reps, and I think Falk had come in and finished the rest of the reps on the drills that they were doing because of a fumble. So it was an interesting thing. I hadn't really seen anybody kind of get yelled at while I was there, and that does stick out to me with Webb.
All right, Alex, and now give me your running backs, and this is one of the tougher groups to judge because, well, there are a couple of factors, but you go ahead and give me your group, I'll give you mine, and we'll talk about why.
This one was a little tough for me. I've been trying to ponder if they're going to keep all five or if they're just going to go with four and who's going to be the odd man out. I think the top three, obviously Bell, Montgomery, and Powell, and then who's it going to be between McGuire and Cannon. I think that because Ty Montgomery is going to be used a lot as a wide receiver, that they're going to be able to roll with the five running backs. In the event that something happens to Le'Veon Bell, you're going to need more than three running backs to get through the season. And if Montgomery has a bit of a wide receiver role, then McGuire is going to be the guy that sticks. So I have all five making it in this scenario here, and mainly just due to Ty Montgomery's versatility.
Yeah, and that was one of the factors I was talking about because it basically, do you list Ty Montgomery as a running back or a receiver? I listed him as a running back for our purposes. I went with Bell, McGuire, Powell, Montgomery, and I'm a big Trenton Cannon fan. I've talked about let's write him off as an injury, put him on IR for the year, but I would have no problem. To me, the biggest X factor is Bilal Powell's health. I think if he gets any type of injury, big or small, well, I shouldn't say bigger. I mean, if he misses a few days, who cares? But I think if anything happens, and Bilal Powell has had some injuries throughout his career, so I think if he gets nicked up, I think they're going to look at him and say, look, he's an older guy, young in terms of mileage, old by NFL running back standards, young by total, number of carries, but given his injury history, I think if something happens there, and we see an injury from Powell at any point, I don't think he makes the roster. But I'm gonna go out on a limb, say he stays healthy. Bell, McGuire, Powell, Montgomery, but would not be the least bit surprised if it's Bell, McGuire. As we said, Cannon finds a way to stick, and then Montgomery, you can list him as a receiver, a tweener basically. He can just be kind of an X factor who doesn't really fall under any of those categories if they move him around enough. And we'll see. I think it's an interesting group. And I'll actually talk about the versatility here when we do our wide receivers. So who do you have at wide receiver? How many are they carrying, and who are they?
Okay, so the Jets are going to keep 6 wide receivers, mainly because I think the UDFA Greg Dortch is going to make the team. What he lacks in stature, I think he makes up in heart. I think yesterday he made a nice one-handed grab. He was heavily involved in the punt return mix. He was basically in the mix with all the special teams groups. So I just have a feeling that he might stick, and we just don't know how, it's going to round out throughout the season with, obviously more injuries are going to occur. Maybe there's a situation where he ends up on the practice squad after, like Chris Herndon comes back because, obviously at the moment he's missing 4 games. So the Jets are going to have the ability to carry an extra player at a particular position. I feel that because of that, maybe Dortch sticks. So my 6 are going to be Anderson, Robbie Anderson, Quincy Nunwa, Crowder, Josh Bellamy. I think Deontay Burnett is playing extremely well. He's still buried on the depth chart, but he just kept making plays, just like he did late in the season last year. And the chemistry that he has with Darnold, I think it's just too much of a factor for him not to make this squad at all. So I have the Jets going with 6 wide receivers at the moment, and we'll just, have to put an asterisk on Burnett and Dortch to see. I think it really comes down to which one of those 2 guys can separate themselves. And the reason why I think Dortch might have a little bit of an edge on Burnett is his return ability and the fact that he'll probably be more involved in possibly punt and kick return duties.
All right, a lot of good points there, Alex, and I will confess with my wide receiver, if we were doing a 53-man roster, and it was like, if this was a competition where we get $100 for every guy we get right, I probably wouldn't have one of the guys here. This is pure selfishness because of my love of versatility and being able to scheme and confuse defenses and have them constantly on their toes. So for that reason, I'm carrying 7 receivers: Robbie, Quincy, Crowder, Deontay Burnett, Josh Bellamy, Greg Dortch, and my wild card is Jeff Smith, the undrafted free agent out of BC. Went to BC initially as a quarterback, wasn't a very good one, but transitioned well to wide receiver, opened some eyes when he ran a sub-4 440s, very explosive guy, and the fact that you can kind of mix him in a little bit for some maybe again, not strictly a gimmick play guy, because if you're on a 4-3-7 and Adam Gase find a way to get him open and let him make some plays, and I know I saw his name once or twice from some of the camp tweets on a couple of deep balls, but I don't think it was, he's with the 2s and 3s at this point. But I love the idea of an explosive undrafted rookie who can bring more to the table and be that Brad Smith type on offense who can do a couple different things. So that's why Jeff Smith, again, if there was money involved here, if it mattered a whole lot that I got this right, Jeff Smith probably isn't on my 53, and I'd be going with another wide receiver in this spot. So I fully admit this is my bias and my preference for just having as much versatility and explosion on offense as possible. I'd probably have Deontay Thompson in that spot, if not for the fact that I want that versatility there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I did see, I think he's wearing number 9. And, he was heavily involved in the mix with some of the return and duties as well, as well as J.J. Jones. He was involved in some kicking.
He's another one. They have some guys who can move. They have some, we say it all the time, 40s aren't everything. But we also say it's what you can't teach. So if you can mold and develop these guys, even into role players where you can find a couple plays that work for them, these are guys that, have the physical skills to make an impact, but it's all a matter of, it's great if you're on a 4-3-40, but if, do you get twisted out of your route when a corner, puts a hand on your shoulder, are you moved off your route that quickly and the play is disrupted and you may as well not be on the field to begin with. So I get that, it's not the be-all, end-all, but when you have those skills that are hard to come by, you got to keep an eye on those players. And the Jets have 3, 4, 5 guys that can flat out fly.
Oh, yeah, speed is, something that, like you said, you can't coach it. And no big surprise here. I should be expecting this, but Trenton Cannon's speed is just unbelievable. And
it really is. I think he might be the fastest guy on the roster.
Oh, absolutely. It's just kind of like when you're seeing a play that's kind of going away from you and he's turning that corner, because of his size, he kind of gets lost in the bunch, and then next thing you know, you're turning your head, and there he is 20 yards downfield, and you're looking at the back of the defensive guy's jersey. So, again, this team we've got a lot of speed. We've got a lot of guys that, can make big plays, and I think that's going to be one of the factors. Our strength is definitely going to be this running back group for this offense, and, who do you want to put your weakest guy on? Because when it comes down to, a linebacker or safety, how fast is that guy? Can he keep up with these guys? And that's where I think the Jets are going to really, really take advantage of, defenses that are sleeping.
Yeah, that's something I was going to touch on briefly. I know we've talked about it a bunch this offseason, and I don't know if it's the fact that the season is getting closer that I'm getting that much more excited. I did a short article on it earlier this week. But I can't, and, it's almost like I have to constantly check myself and just say, is this the fan in me being, insanely biased in looking at this roster the way I am? But I just, we've talked about it before, and I kind of can't get it out of my head. The the way this team, in a perfect world, injuries can happen, stuff happens. But if everybody's healthy and Adam Gase is the guy he's supposed to be, I said earlier this offseason, Alex, we did some predictions, and I said that I thought Darnold would break the team touchdown record. And then I saw Brian Costello of the New York Post did a piece today saying that this could be the best Jets offense in a long time. And, I mean, someone's going to have to explain to me why that's not right, why it's wrong to say this team has the talent to be one of the highest scoring teams the Jets have ever put on the field. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but, we've talked about how they can attack at every level with Robbie and Quincy. Quincy Speed's underrated. It doesn't get talked about, maybe because he's that physical guy. People just think he's sort of a bulldozer, which he can be. But the guy ran a 4.45 at the combine. A couple years ago, before the neck injury, he was PFF's top-rated receiver on receptions of 20 yards or longer. And Crowder underneath with his quickness, Herndon with what we saw from him last year. You add Wesco in the mix, and some of these tight ends, which we're going to talk about next. A guy like Ryan Griffin. Ryan Griffin, he was a 400 or 500-yard guy a couple years ago with the Texans. On a team that has DeAndre Hopkins. And they had enough receivers that the tight end was going to be an afterthought. So they have some players here. Robbie, Quincy, Crowder, Herndon, when he's in there. Griffin, if he's on the roster. And, oh, by the way, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, what is it that you expect an offense to be able to do that this team can't do other than, and I get this is a big one, the run blocking has to be better. But does the run blocking have to be perfect? It's this versatility that we're talking about that puts the offensive line in a position where the defense there's a very good chance defenses are going to spend a lot of time kind of back on their heels and not really, just trying to anticipate who's going where. When you can motion Le'Veon Bell from the backfield into the slot and then bring Ty Montgomery into the backfield. No, Montgomery isn't the running back that Le'Veon Bell is. So now maybe you back off the run a little bit because you sure as hell better not leave Le'Veon Bell alone. He's a 60-70 catch guy. So you got to pay attention to him. You got to pay attention to Robbie Deep. So you're still, it's not like you can say, okay, well now that Le'Veon's not in the backfield, we don't have to worry about the run. Well, you better because Ty Montgomery can run it. And whether it's Bilal Powell or Eli McGuire, both those guys can run it, catch it, and block. Bell can run it, catch it, and block. So there's really, for the things you look for from an offense, there's nobody who's a liability. A lot of times you say, well, if you have this guy in, it's a run play because he can't pass block. Or if this tight end, say you're bringing Jordan Leggett in the game, it's probably a pass play because he's not a great blocker. And probably even more so like a Jeff Cumberland type. Or, just some of these guys who can catch it a little bit, but they can't block to save their lives. From what we've seen of Griffin, for anyone who's gone back and watched any of him, he can block it, and he can catch it, and he can block. Brown, now we got to see more of him, but he played wide receiver in college. He's primarily been a blocker in the pros. So you would have to believe he can block and catch. Herndon can block and catch. It sure as hell looks like Wesco's going to be a guy who can block like hell and catch it a little bit. He's got to get open. I don't know if he'll be able to do that or how frequently. But tell me, first of all, I know the first thing people say, oh, none of this matters because the line sucks. No, this does matter because the line is not great, but not as bad as people make it out to be. And having weapons that can beat you at every level is going to make the line that much better and help them out a little bit. So tell me what a team has to do on offense if this Jets team doesn't have the tools to do. That's just me. I didn't mean to go on that long, but I did want to touch on that in this episode because as I was writing that article the other day, I was like, is this me? Am I crazy? Or does this team have the way to beat you at every level, legitimately? Not wishful thinking. Not like, oh, well, hopefully, not like you have a rookie or an unproven slot guy, and you're like, well, if this guy turns out to be good, that's another weapon. No, these guys are proven weapons. What they haven't proven, many of them, is that they can stay healthy, stay on the field. And that brings us to the tight ends. Alex, go ahead and start us off for your 3 or 4, however many tight ends you got them carrying.
Yep, we were talking about this before we came on. Due to Herndon's situation, his suspension, I believe that the Jets will be able to carry an extra player until he gets cleared or activated, rather, and then they'll have to make a cut. So I can clearly see them keeping 4 tight ends in Wesco, Griffin, Tomlinson, and Brown. And then if I had to be a guessing man, it would probably be between Eric Tomlinson and Daniel Brown, who's going to end up getting cut. That would be my personal opinion on it. I was definitely impressed with the way Ryan Griffin was utilized. He wasn't getting many opportunities with the ones because I think he's still trying to learn the offense, but they were flexing him out. Him and Brown were being flexed out, at far outside as, that flex Y tight end that, people talk about. He looks like he was lined up as a wide receiver. Even Daniel Brown, like you said, he looks like a wide receiver, but clearly, he's in the tight end mix. One thing that stood out was I'd probably have to say that the longest gains and receptions that were had by all the tight ends this weekend was Ryan Griffin. So he definitely has the tool set as a receiving tight end, and I feel that rolling into the first month, if Herndon gets all 4 games, I feel very comfortable with a Tomlinson, Griffin, and Wesco mix. And if they run a 3 tight end set for a little power football, I definitely feel very confident in the run game. And with the whole situation with the offensive line, we got a better left guard in Kelechi Osemele, in my opinion, from James Carpenter. And look at some of the things that Isaiah Crowell did. Multiple 200-yard games, and he had a handful of 100-yard games too. So if an average to a below-average running back like Crowell can do what he did with this squad, and now we have got a better left guard in the mix, what could Le'Veon Bell do? Because Le'Veon Bell is way more talented than Crowell. So a little side note on that. But to stay on topic, I think 4 tight ends are going to stay in the mix, and it's either going to be Tomlinson or Brown that's going to get cut when Herndon comes back into the mix.
Yeah, I think Tomlinson is a guy. He's got to have a bounce back year because last year was definitely his worst year with the Jets. I think the concern becomes how many guys do you keep who can do the same thing? Because to me, Griffin is probably a better version of Tomlinson, and I think they expect Wesco will be a better version of Tomlinson. So really, you're keeping 3 inline blocking tight ends. And I think Tomlinson's hands are better than he gets credit for. He's not great, but he'll catch the ball. But do you need 3 guys who block and catch it, but don't make dynamic plays? For that reason, I have them carrying 3 with Herndon suspended for the first 4 games. It's going to start off Brown, Griffin, Wesco, and then when Herndon is eligible to come back, well, I almost want to say Brown or Griffin will go. But if those guys are playing all right, then maybe they make a cut elsewhere. But for that position alone to start the season, Herndon suspended, Brown, Griffin, Wesco are your tight ends, and Tomlinson moves on. Like I said, if Tomlinson bounces back and plays the way he did a couple of years ago, when he's a much better blocker than he was last season, he's got a shot. But I think this regime likes the idea of adding as many of their own people as possible. Obviously, like 90 guys in camp, probably 86 of them were acquired by Mike McCagnon. So you can only get rid of so many. But I think they want to kind of bring in their own people, as time goes on. So that may work against Tomlinson as well. And that brings us to the O-line. How many and who?
Okay. I kind of have them a little split up here because I did the starters on the top of my list, and then I put my bench guys in the back. But I have 10 offensive linemen, and we all know the starting 5 with Kelvin Beachum, Kelechi Osemele, Jonathan Harrison. By the way, Harrison is in phenomenal shape. Very impressed. Not your average center. The typical big-bellied, kind of husky-looking centers, they're offensive linemen that you're accustomed to seeing. I'd have to say that he's probably the most cut as far as physique offensive lineman, that I've seen at the center position in my, watching football. And then Brian Winters and Brandon Shell. And then behind them, Doga. I've got Eric Smith, John Toth, Tom Compton, and Ben Braden. I have an asterisk on Ben Braden because if Quale's health situation improves and he ends up being able to make the roster in September, then obviously I think Braden will probably end up going to the practice squad. But in the event that Quale is not available until later in the season, I think Ben Braden will get the opportunity to be a backup.
Yeah, I'm really torn, as you know, and have been for a couple months now, on the Brian Winters situation. There's one part of me that says that Compton can come out and play at or near his level, meaning the Jets will cut Brian Winters and save that $6.5 million. Why pay a guy $6.5 when you have another guy who can do a job just as well? Sorry?
Yeah, sorry about that. Looks like my call dropped.
So, yeah, I'm torn on Winters. Part of me thinks he wins the starting job, and then part of me says maybe they just boot him, save the $6.5 million, and give Compton that roster spot. So, for the sake of making things interesting, I'm going to say that's the way it goes. I'm going to say it's Beecham, Osmelli, Harrison, Compton, Shell. Winters goes. They save $6.5 million there. Then the backups are going to be Adoga, Quale, who, again, we'll touch on that. I think it's going to be Adoga, Wyatt Miller, the undrafted free agent. I think he has a shot to stick and take, or not take Quale's spot, but with Quale's roster spot opening up. Toth, who you also had, and Ben Braden. And Quale, we don't know how long he's going to be out. All we know at this point is that they're saying it's not going to be season-ending. So does that mean he misses 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, or 8 or 9 weeks? So if it's long-term, they'll have to have a long-term backup replacement. But that's what I'm going to go. I had Winters on my initial 53, but the more I thought about it, I thought Compton moves better, and Winters makes $6.5 million. They can recoup all of that, which would then, of course, carry over to next year. So that's where I'm going on the O-line. And it's not, I'm not saying I want Brian. Somebody said that to me because, I've mentioned the possibility of Winters going a couple times. And people are like, someone said to me, why do you hate Brian Winters so much? I think Brian Winters is probably an awesome dude. Like, the little bit I know about him, talking to people that work for the team, he seems like I'm sure he's a really good guy. I don't dislike Brian Winters. I'm just looking at it from a perspective of, I think they can get similar play from a guy who doesn't make nearly as much, and when that happens, teams will often let guys go. So if he sticks, fine. If he doesn't, it won't be the least bit surprising to me.
And congratulations to the Winters family. Nash Winters is the new addition. He had a newborn last week, and I think that's why he missed the first practice or two. So congratulations to the Winters family.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alex. I put the guy on the unemployment line, and the first thing you say is he just had a kid. That way to make me look like a total heel. While Glenn is firing Brian Winters, we just want to let everyone know he just had a child whose dad is now looking for work.
Blocks, then he might be out of the job.
Yeah, his father is now unemployed. Poor little Nash. Hopefully they find a way to make it through. Got any more gems for us, Glenn? So yeah, no, but seriously though, congratulations to the Winters clan on their newest addition. And if Brian Winters were to get cut, I think he'd get by. He's made a few dollars.
He's made a few bucks.
And it's not like he'd be unemployed for long. He's still a starting level guard. He'd be playing somewhere, making more money than I could ever imagine. So anyway.
And with all the hunter gear he has in shirts, I'm sure he could live off the land for a while too.
Yeah, and I will say with Winters going, actually, that leaves me the next guy on my roster was Eric Smith, and I'm actually torn, Alex, because I like some of the interior guys who are long shots, whether it's the undrafted guys or some of the waiver wire or free agent pickups. There are a couple of guys on there that I've said
Alvin
a few times this offseason. Well, Anderson at tackle. Well, Anderson, I was trying to decide between Anderson and Wyatt. At tackle, and I think honestly, if I was going to say tackle, it'd be Eric Smith. But I think I'm gonna go with Wyatt Miller because of the fact that he's played left and right tackle and he's been incredibly durable. So for that reason, I would go with him. But I know that I heard or I read on Twitter that they had Jordan Morgan working at center with the second team, and he's a guy that I really like because he's another guy. Him and Tyler Jones, those are the two interior offensive linemen that intrigue me the most. Jones, has a reputation as a very good pass blocker, and Jordan Morgan, coming out of Kutztown, a small school guy who was going to need time to develop, and the Bears gave up on him rather quickly. Maybe he just doesn't have it. Maybe the Bears didn't feel like they were willing to wait. And Brian Winters is a perfect example. Brian Winters isn't a all-pro player, but he's a guy who really struggled for his first couple seasons coming out of Kent State and eventually came around and became a quality player. And sometimes that happens. So Morgan and Tyler Jones really interest me, but I would go with the tackle in that spot, Eric Smith. And Wyatt Miller is a guy who, some scouting reports anyway say he's a guy that teams might kick inside. But not a lot of fans get excited about watching the offensive line in preseason. But guys like Tyler Jones, Jordan Morgan, Wyatt Miller, Anderson, Eric Smith, I want to see these guys play.
Yeah, and hopefully Joe Douglas and his staff are keeping an eye on backup opportunities for the center position. Multiple errant snaps this weekend off the shotgun formation. Simeon he might as well gotten his baseball glove out. He had a couple grounders that he had to field. I think Webb had one that almost went over his head. So we've been there. We've done that. We saw that with Spencer Long last year. Could get real ugly if anything happens to Jonathan Harrison. So that's definitely something that I hope Joe Douglas is keeping both eyes on the radars of other teams.
Yep. So we'll see how it all plays out, but I think there's going to be some interesting guys in that group. And let's say let's have your offensive line picks, Alex.
Okay. I think I ran through them, but I can recap here. I had the starting five: Beecham, Osemele, Harrison, Winters, Shell, and then Chuma Adoga, Eric Smith, John Toth, Tom Compton, and Ben Braden, with asterisk on that one. If Quale gets cleared or gets healthy somehow, I think Braden would probably be a practice squad guy.
Yeah, I think you broke up at the last second. What were those last two names?
It would be between Ben Braden and Brent Quale.
Yeah, I think that Braden's a guy, and I've said before, I think that he's probably more of a run blocker than a pass blocker. But you like any of these guys that find a way onto a roster, after going undrafted, stick with the practice squad, keep battling, find themselves on a roster late in the season. Didn't see any game action, but an interesting prospect nonetheless. And I looked at a couple of other 53-man projections a couple of days ago, and there were a few people that have him making the roster. And again, this time of year, it is people just giving their best guess, and maybe it's the fact that Braden's been around for a little while. They have him ahead of some of these other undrafted guys, and he may stick, but you can't not like any story like that. Any undrafted guys who battle their way up, and the guys who will be on the opposite side along the defensive line. Who do you like, Alex?
Okay, so what are we talking? We're talking 3-4, 4-3 here. But all right, so let's go with my three-man front. I'd have to go with Leonard Williams on defensive end, Quentin Williams in the nose, Henry Anderson playing the other defensive end position. So that would be my starting three. I think my starting four-man front would be both Williams, McClendon, and Bronson Kafusi. That may be the tallest and maybe the largest defensive line in the league, I'm going to say, just from what I've seen, but I could be wrong. So I have, that's four right there, and I also have Nathan Shepard in the mix as well. So right now I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 defensive linemen at the moment. Might be a a little short right there, depending on how Lorenzo Fatukasi ends up. But right now I have 6 defensive linemen rolling into the season.
All right, we're in line for the most part. I've got Leo, Henry Anderson, Quinnen, McClendon, Kafasi, and I had Shepard, but what made me bump him at the last second was the fact that he's an older guy for a second-year player. And I think unless he's absolutely fantastic, I think they're going to move on and say this guy's, it's not like he's a 22-year-old who has 3, 4, 5 years of growing and getting better ahead of him. He's in his peak years now, and he did so little last year. I can't see him making that much of a jump that he's all of a sudden a guy who's good enough to make a roster under a new regime at his age. So I'm going to go with another unknown, another undrafted guy in Tennessee defensive lineman Kyle Phillips. He's a guy who I've said before, I think he was the best player on a bad defense at a big-time school. And I think from what I watched of him, instinctive guy, good motor, and he's somebody who I think can find a way to sneak onto this team.
Yeah, and now when I'm looking at this, and I can't believe I forgot him. And now I'm looking at my wide receiver group, and I'm wondering if I made a mistake here because I forgot about Terrell Basham, and I know that he's kind of a tweener between a defensive end and outside linebacker.
He was a tough one to leave off.
And I'll have to say this: I thoroughly enjoyed the battle between him and. I know he changed his name. I'm still going with Bucky Hodges, but those two guys went at each other this Sunday. It was awesome. They were doing some special team drills, and there was one play where I guess somebody felt that a flag should have been thrown, and they just went right back at each other after the whistle, and they had to be separated a little bit, and then the talking kept going from one group across from the other. They just kept drawing at each other, and then they got lined up for another drill, and Basham got the best of them. And honestly, if I thought that some hands were going to be thrown and a fight might have broken out, I would have had my money on Hodges and Basham. And that was thoroughly enjoyable to watch the two of them go at it. Like I said before, competition is high, and Joe Douglas and Gase are going to have some tough cuts here.
Yeah, that's, Basham is a guy who, we've talked about. He, in his limited playing time last year, he did stand out a little bit, and he is a guy who could sneak onto this roster. This is why I'm, and we're all excited to see these guys in live action, and we'll see how that works out. But these are tough, man, and the next one we do will be even tougher. Even though we'll have a better idea, there's going to be those guys that make a few plays that really stand out to you, and you just want the guy to stick. But realistically, he probably won't, and you find yourself, you have one sheet of paper, but you have 25 different names crossed off and rewritten and moved around, and it's it's things like this where you're like, why don't they expand the damn roster? Because you just want to find a way. You want to find a way to keep every guy that jumps out at you. But go ahead and give us your linebackers, Alex.
Okay, so this one here, we know Mosley and Avery Williamson are going to be our two guys in the middle. And then on the outsides, we're going to have Jordan Jenkins and Copeland. So that's our 4 right there. And then our backups, I have Polite making the squad clearly as a rookie. And then we have Cashman. And I'm really torn here between Hewitt and Luvu. That one was probably the toughest for me here. But we have our 4 in Jordan Jenkins, CJ, Avery Williamson, and Copeland at the 4. And then Polite, Cashman, and Hewitt. So I have 7 at the moment. But, Hewitt's really going to have to stand out not to be replaced by Frankie Luvu, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't like letting go of Hewitt, but I felt like Cashman takes his spot. I like Luvu a lot, But
Totally see
if
that.
you're talking about a backup coverage linebacker, it's going to be between Cashman and Luvu. I'm sorry, it's going to be between Cashman and Hewitt being a bit longer in the tooth in a backup role. I think Cashman wins that. So I've got Mosley, Avery, Jordan Jenkins, Brandon Copeland, Ja'Kai Polite, Frankie Luvu, and Cashman. Did I say Brian? I probably did, and I probably will a few times. Blake Cashman. So the linebackers, that was it for me. Again, Hewitt was a tough cut because I like the guy. Next up is the safety position. At least two of those are pretty much set in stone.
Yep, we know it's going to be Mayday, Marcus May, and then Jamal Adams, obviously, as the top two. And I only see two other guys in the mix here with Rontez Miles and Doug Middleton, just because 33 is not coming off the field, and a healthy Marcus May is not coming off the field either. So that's the only way I see that getting mixed up. I have four rolling on this team.
Yeah, sorry, who was your last one?
Just Rontez Miles and Doug Middleton backing up May and Adams, so I have four total.
Gotcha. I got Adams, May, Middleton, and I'm going with Brandon Bryant. I like the way he came along last season. I know it's only the preseason, but that Week 4 game against Philly, he looked like he'd made big steps in a short space of time, and I think another off season and going into year 2, he's a more complete player than Miles. So that's my four: Adams, May, Middleton, Bryant. Middleton, though, if Middleton gets injured again, he's had a lot of injuries. He gets hurt again, he could be a guy who's on the bubble and finds himself out of the job, and maybe it's there's another name in there. But if it stays as it is, that's my four. And that brings us to the group that many feel is the weakest on the roster at corner. How many you got, and who are they?
Really upset Tremaine Johnson if you happen to catch his presser.
I did, and that's fine. He should be upset, But first of all, what does he expect the fans to say? Like, just go back and watch what happened to you last year.
Yep.
But then, of course, what do the fans expect him to say? He's going to come out and say, "Yeah, we're really going to hold this team back this year, guys. Sorry to fill you in on that." Of course, he's going to be offended and defensive, and this is what pro athletes do. They use the negative energy, to motivate them. I think it's almost bad to get on opposing players too much, because that pro athletes feed into that stuff, man. They really do. Matter of fact, as this show winds down, I have a funny story about pro athletes feeding off of negative energy. But go ahead, Alex, and let me know who your corners are.
So top two is going to be Tremaine Johnson and Darryl Roberts. Our nickel should be Brian Poole, and then I have Derek Jones and Perry Nickerson. So we're going to be rolling with five defensive backs at the cornerback position.
All right, I have Roberts and Poole, Derek Jones, Perry Nickerson, and I actually have Jeremy Clark, but I put him there. He is literally like the 53rd guy on my roster and one of the first guys I expect to be gone when a move is made. Whether it's cut, well, he won't get traded. He doesn't have any value. Whether they just, if he doesn't make the roster initially, or if he does, I think Joe Douglas is going to have to make a move, and he's going to have to get a corner from somewhere. And I think Clark is the first guy to go. So for anyone saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe you have him on the roster," I have him as my 53rd guy, hanging on by a string. So those are my corners, and the camp battles. Listen, the last three left are the specialists, and we heard about Catanzaro missing a bunch of kicks the other day. Who do you got there? What do you like?
Yeah, unless if they bring in somebody else in, it looks like Catanzaro is going to be the guy, and he had some early struggles. Maybe it was the heat, because it was definitely a scorcher over the weekend, but not looking too great. Missed 3 in a row, and then he bounced back and made 3 in a row on that Saturday practice that I was at. And actually, it sounds terrible of me. I don't know who our long snapper is. Is Hennessy still on the team, or?
Yeah. Hennessy's still the guy at long snapper.
All right, yeah. So lock him in. I don't think there's anybody that's pretty much going to be competing for that. And
they generally.
Weird to me. because
what's that?
With the kickers and the punters and the long snapper, I don't feel like they should be included in the 53. Yes, they're important, but in the same retrospect, I just don't feel special team guys should be part of that. But
you just want more roster spots, Alex.
That's
you,
it.
You want more roster
bodies
spots
on this team.
Give me some football
100%.
players. Why is my punter taking up a roster spot? I should be allowed 53 football players and a punter.
And I came to find out we do have a backup or competition at the punter position. Matt Darr.
That's
competing against Lachlan Edwards. I don't think that's a threat there, but
I think Darr takes the job because he punted very well for Adam Gase. I think Gase brought him in because he's familiar with him and he likes him. I think he's probably, and I could be wrong. I am going off memory here. When the Jets signed him, I looked up his numbers, and they were pretty comparable to Lack Edwards. I could be wrong. But I remember at first I thought, bringing someone in to just give Lack Edwards a rest. And then I looked at the numbers, and I remember thinking, like, oh, okay, they're right in the same ballpark. So with that being the case, and with Gase being a guy who's had Darr in Miami, I'm going to say Darr, Catanzaro. I mean, if he doesn't get his act together, he'll be gone, and they'll just sign somebody right before the season starts. And then Hennessy at long snapper. But basically right now, that puts us at the 53, you and me both. And it'll be a lot more fun to do this after some preseason action. And I know that preseason games, regular season games. What's that?
Yeah, next Thursday, not this upcoming, but next Thursday, we got football.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know if I'm going to be. I didn't realize that till the other day. I'm going to be out of the country. Well, I'm already out of that country. I'll be out of this country for a few weeks during the preseason. So I'll probably be trying to get some. I'll be trying to watch these games live, but I'm going to be in France, in a lovely area, but it's an area where there is like no Wi-Fi because it's just a small little village in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes I can steal Wi-Fi from the restaurant across the street, so I will likely be watching game recaps. What is it? I don't even know if they do the condensed version on NFL Game Pass for preseason games. I can't remember. But I will be seeing these games one way or the other. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it. But I'll be away for a couple of them.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
It'll be Big Blues home game, but I'll be representing Gang Green for sure and heckling my buddies as much as I can. Yeah,
it'll be an interesting preseason. Lots of new weapons to put on display. And, of course, they'll limit what they do because it is the preseason. But I know the Jets fans, far and wide are excited about this group that they've put together, and there's plenty of reason for them to be. And we'll see how it all plays out. Just want to thank you, Alex, for your report on what you saw at camp. I know you're going to take in some more days in the not-so-distant future. And that you'll be able to talk about on here. And actually, you and I have to talk about the show while I'm away and figuring out if those will be solo or if we're going to try to have me call in from middle of nowhere, France. But for us tonight, that'll do it. Check out our sponsor, by the way, Mile Social, M-I-L-E Social. Mile Social. If you run a small business and you're finding yourself a little bit too much on your plate, too many tasks, not enough time, you need somebody to run your social media for you, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, Mile Social, M-I-L-E Social is the way to go. They will handle all of your social media needs. Hopefully more customers through the door, more cash in your pocket. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alex, anything to add before we go?
Definitely excited to see another episode of One Jets Drive tonight. I love those shows, by the way. I don't know if you've caught any of them, but they're like our own Hard Knocks, and I could watch that stuff all day. I wish they were a little bit longer. Definitely looking forward to that. And anybody who wants to see something cool, one of our rookies, Calvin Anderson, who I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you heard me say a Rubik's Cube Master. Did you pick up on that?
I didn't hear that. No, sorry.
Okay, so I tweeted it earlier, so if you want to check out my timeline, at NYJetsLife24, this guy is a master at the Rubik's Cube. You have to check it out. he can do it behind his back without even looking. I don't even understand it. And then
That's
he goes
ridiculous.
on. It was actually Dennis Waszak who had put this out there. So thank you, Dennis, for that. And the way he explains on how he does it, I'm wondering why this guy isn't some sort of like mathematician and why he's in the NFL. But definitely very cool. Check out Calvin Anderson, Jets fans.
All right, so there you have it, Calvin Anderson and his magical Rubik's Cube skills. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight, Jets fans. We will be back again next week with more and some more camp reports and hopefully some good news from the development of young Sam Darnold. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great night, Jets fans.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at JetNation Radio. Glenn is at AceFan23 and Alex is at NYJetsLife24. Until next time, go Jets!